Hello and welcome to a very special edition of From Dials Where to Where, the Mesut Island Disks episode. And I'm very, very happy to have two very good, excellent, I should say, guests with me this evening. It's been a long time coming, so I'm very, very grateful for you both to be here. First up, it's Andrew Mangan, better known as Arseblog. How are you, Andrew?
I'm good, Andrew. I'm just noticing we're three A's here tonight with a couple of Andrews and
Actually, yeah.
an A in there. Yeah, triple A.
Triple A, I like it.
Triple X.
Absolutely. Well, I think you're good enough to not just to be called the podcast. I was going to say the Podfather, Andrew. You're good enough to be the Podfather 1, 2, and 3. Really.
Okay. Well, 3 wasn't great. 1 and 2 were great. 3. But I'll take it anyway. Don't worry.
Well, I've been, as I've mentioned a few times on Twitter, I've been listening to your back catalogue because I've still been working through every day, and the nature of the work that I do is pretty much me on my own all day. So I've had 10 or 12 hours a day to kill, and I've just been listening to back-to-back podcasts, and it's just been keeping me sane, literally. And I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to the whole back catalogue from episode 1. And some of the characters that you had, I don't know why you stopped doing those. They're brilliant.
I grew up with it, I think.
But if you could bring back one character, who would you bring back out of all the previous characters that you've had, your favourites that you've done in the past?
I always liked Arshavin because there was something quite strange and surreal about doing a weird Andrei Arshavin impression. So, yeah, maybe him. The possibilities are endless with that.
Sylvester.
Oh, baby!
Yeah.
And who can forget Arsene Wenger?
You forgot.
Yeah. Absolutely fantastic. In fact, I tried to get him on tonight just to, just to say hi, but he couldn't make it. But he left me a voice message. I think if I can bring it up.
Thank you for having me on your podcast. I've been working as a rent boy for the last few years after being cast aside like a chewed up bit of bristle by the fucking Arseblogger. My arsehole is the size of a channel tunnel after all the bum sex I've had to suffer. I've not been wasting my time though. I've been plotting my revenge on the Arseblogger. I've got a special set of skills. I'm going to find him, and I'm going to kill him. I'll slice his penis off, and chop it into slices, and make it look like pickled beetroot, then make him suffer like my bottom has suffered for the last few years. Oh yes, I'm going to get medieval on his ass.
Well, that's a bit harsh, actually. I didn't properly pre-listen to that, so I'm sorry about that. I thought it was going to be nice and pleasant. But he's not a very pleasant person, is he, really? So
No. Well, let's move on quickly.
Yes. Adrian Clarke, I'm really excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good to be on, and it was interesting because you weren't aware. Obviously, I could see from your Twitter handle that you're from Hinckley, wow. but yeah, a couple of years ago I moved to Burbage, which is basically next door to Hinckley. So we're practically neighbours. And look, if we weren't on lockdown, I'd probably be able to do this in person. So not to be, but I'm not too far away.
Maybe in another time, if we ever recover from this as a society, if we're ever allowed out ever again, maybe we can do it next time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but look, the wonders of technology. We're all zooming and going on these internet rooms, aren't we? At the moment, it's fantastic. It's I think we're having to make the best of it, aren't we?
Well, until all this kicked off, I'd never heard of Zoom, and I have to actually. I'm with you, Andrew. I've never been on Zoom ever in my life. I think we're the only two. I think maybe
so. I think everyone else is doing it because they have to, because of work and what have you. But yeah,
it's I don't know. It just seems to be taking over the world, and I must be very much behind on that. Anyway, tonight we are going to be doing, as I say, my own take really on Desert Island Disks, and it was purely brought about by Ian Wright's appearance recently on Desert Island Disks, and I think Did you both listen to that? The Ian Wright's appearance on that?
Yeah, I missed it, but I heard it. I heard it was fantastic. I heard it was very emotional. I wasn't surprised because Wrighty, he can tug at the heartstrings. Can Wrighty?
Honestly, I think if you get emotional, you must be dead inside if you listen to that.
Yeah, it took him about 2 minutes to start welling up for the first time, but it was great. It's really fantastic because heart's on the sleeve, Adrian, as you know. So yeah, really good listen. So when you have a chance, it's worth checking out.
Definitely, I couldn't agree more. One that I haven't listened to as yet is the Tony Adams one, and apparently that is right up there with the Ian Wright's appearance on that. Have you listened to that?
No, I haven't done that one yet. So
no, I can imagine it's a bit quirkier than Ian Wright's. He's a character, is Tony, but yeah, gotta love him.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, obviously you're an ex-Arsenal player. I mean, you've lived the dream. You've done what I think all of us listening to this podcast, hopefully now and in the future, have done. You actually played for Arsenal, which is fantastic. And I think until recently, I think most people have grown up under having one manager, but Arsenal. But you were there under three, I think, weren't you, Adrian?
Yeah. George Graham was the original, of course, and then so he was there throughout. Actually, the time that I was in the youth setup, I got spotted at the age of 10. He was there then. I think it was very early in his tenure, and by the time he left, I was in and around the first team squad. So fantastic journey under George. Great years for the first team. Blimey, I mean, won a lot of trophies, and it wasn't always the prettiest football, but Arsenal had a lot of spirit, and it was full of characters, wasn't it? The teams built by George, and then briefly Bruce Rioch, who's brilliant for me, not remembered particularly fondly, I guess, but that season wasn't disastrous under him. It was actually a big improvement on the previous year under George, and he brought Bergkamp in, so he deserves a bit of kudos for that. And then of course Arsene Wenger, but I never sadly got to play a first team game under Arsene, which still upsets me a little bit to this day. But there you go. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, I've read a couple of articles about your time under Arsene Wenger, and when he brought in the new regime with stretching and everything, and everyone was stretching muscles they didn't know they had, and everything. I've read that particular article. I think it was in 442, which was quite interesting as well. But you must have been in and around some incredible players, in your time with Arsenal as well. I mean, who stood out for you during your time there?
Oh, so many, but Dennis Bergkamp's definitely the best. There's no hesitation there. Just class, absolute class. On and off the pitch, really nice guy, dry sense of humour, but inclusive of all the younger guys. He was just normal, but on the pitch he wasn't normal. He just had that velvet touch that we know about. And incredible. Just when I did have the pleasure of sort of playing with him, the one thing I noticed was just the ball was always the right weight towards you. If it needed to be pinged into you, it was pinged in. If it was, if it was in front of you, you didn't have to break stride. He just made you look a better player. But of the others, Wrighty, Tony Adams, Merson was super talented. Yeah. I loved playing behind both fullbacks, Winterburn and Dixon. They made my life easy. So yeah, very, very lucky to live the dream, as you rightly pointed out.
Yeah, incredible. I mean, after I'm going to obviously quickly move on, but whilst I've obviously got you on the show, ask you a couple of questions. I mean, you sort of we need to spend another podcast really going back through your career, because I find it fascinating as well. So I'm really interested in the lower leagues as well as obviously Arsenal as well. I love football in general.
Yeah.
And I love listening to your podcast you do on the lower leagues and everything, but with regards to sort of moving into the media side and, what everyone sees nowadays with your tactical breakdowns and that you do for Arsenal, which are brilliant. How in God's name did you do tactical breakdowns under Unai Emery? Teams? Because I've got to give you some props for that, because I think everyone could struggle to see any kind of tactics whatsoever.
Well,
you don't have to answer that.
I did my best. No, it's all right. I did my best. Look, it just got very, very muddled, didn't it? There's a good tactician in there, And in that first season, he made some pretty shrewd moves, often at half time after he'd picked the wrong starting 11. But, there's a football mind in there. He just got himself into more and more of a pickle. But yeah, unfortunately, having done the breakdown for so long under Arsene Wenger, I was excited to do it under a new manager with a different style, different patterns obviously emerge. But it was just more jumbled than before. There was no clear identity to the team from one half to the next, really, and that made it tricky. But the bottom line is, when you're having to watch these games back, and most of the time I watch the games twice, you want them to be good performances and you want to be entertained. And unfortunately, under Unai Emery, the football was not of the highest quality, was it? And I think we all saw that.
I mean, you must have. I mean, seriously though, you actually must have really struggled to come up with.
Well, not really. You just. Well, yeah, it is.
You don't want to sound too negative or anything, do you? But it must have been tough.
Well, I've always said from the word go with the breakdown, I have to be honest. And if I'm going to do this for you, i.e. for you, the club, you have to let me make it myself. They have to be my words, my analysis. And they've been very, very good with that and allowed me a free rein, which is fantastic. But obviously, that there's a line there that you can't cross. And you just have to, you can't get too personal. I'm absolutely fine to criticise, but as long as I do it in a constructive manner, and I think I've always tried to do that. And what I found was there was a lot more criticism under Unai Emery. But look, the back end of the Arsene Wenger era was not exactly, full of fun and games, was it, guys?
No, but interspersed with the terrible performances under Arsene Wenger towards the end, there was still some scintillating ones as well. Every now and then, we'd still go out and score a few goals. But
but at the same time, Emery, it wasn't all bad. There were some good performances. I mean, Andrew, you've seen it. I mean, there were people describing, Emery ball was a thing, wasn't it, for about a week or two?
Yeah, about a week.
But it wasn't awful.
What it was, I think, Adrian, when he took over, people were ready for a change, and I think people were actually enthused and wanted him to do well. They wanted the team to do well, and they wanted some of the issues that, let's say some of the defensive issues that we had under Arsene Wenger, they wanted, those to be addressed. And when we talk about tactics, there was a sort of, you can't be a football manager at the top level like Arsene was for 30 odd years and not do tactics, so to speak. But some managers are more focused on the opposition. Arsene was always more focused on his own team and making sure that they played as well as they could. And with Unai Emery, at first it seemed to be, well, here's a guy who's going to look at what the opposition does and try and, work them out from a tactical point of view. But it came, as we learned, at the expense of what his own team was doing, So we maybe just went too far the other way. The balance just shifted too far the other way. But, it didn't work out. But I do think that, we were hopeful that it would be better than it was. And, look, it turned out the way it did, and we're in a different place now. So let's enjoy that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just getting good, wasn't it, as well? It's so Arsenal. So Arsenal. We just,
Well, I mean,
it's us that shut the league down at the end.
Yeah, true. This one isn't our own fault. I think it's fair to say.
No, and it's not an injury either, which is a step forward, I suppose. But I could go on about it for ages.
Yeah,
so
you're not a fan, I sense, Andrew. But, you're not a fan of Mr. Emery, I sense. Yeah,
not from day one, unfortunately.
No,
but seriously, I genuinely.
It's gone now. Don't worry about it. It's over. It's over.
Yeah, it's over. We've just got we've got the White Witch to thank anyway. She finally got rid of him.
Oh.
That's madness, isn't it? I mean, that's a whole new wormhole. I'm not going to go down because we've got stuff to get through. But some of the stuff he's come out with after he's left, geez, I mean, anyway, makes you think. We got away with one there. We dodged a bullet. Let's move on. Let's go on to this Mesut Island Disks. Anyway, quickly, we've got one Arsenal goal that you'd be happy to sort of watch on rotation. One Arsenal game one Arsenal game to wipe from history. And then we move on to the songs. One song to summarise the Wenger era, the Emery era, and then the future under Arteta as it stands now. What are your thoughts as it stands now? And then a film to summarise overall what Arsenal means to you. So let's crack on with the goals. I mean, I've done this before, but I can give you my previous answers anyway. But one Arsenal goal. Let's start with you, Adrian. What would you be happy to sort of watch over and over again?
Well, it's a goal that I was very fortunate to commentate on from the gantry at Emirates Stadium, and it was a goal that typified Arsene Wenger's style of football. It was a goal that was artistic with a capital A. It was just glorious, and it's Jack Wilshere's goal against Norwich in 2013. I struggled to think of another team really that would have been able to score that goal. It was just so instinctive. It was so Arsenal. It was so Arsene Wenger, wasn't it? And what I loved about it was that Jack Wilshere started to move deep inside his own half. I think it ended up going to Cazorla, gets it back, then it goes back to Cazorla, into Giroud, into Wilshere, back to Giroud, little flick. I mean, you've all seen it. It was a thing of beauty, and it's a symbolic goal. I think I think when we look back at Arsenal under Arsene Wenger, it's a goal that will always spring into people's minds, and I can watch it on repeat. For minutes on end. It's fantastic.
It's hard to argue with that, really, isn't it? I mean, it's probably one of the best goals ever scored in the Premier League, really.
I think, what's interesting about that goal is that, as Adrian said, it's just aesthetically beautiful. And maybe at the back of it is this sort of sense of underachievement at the same time that you can do this, but somehow the team didn't really kick on to do what we wanted it to do. And even Jack himself didn't quite fulfill the potential that he had. So, I mean, it is just an outstanding piece of football when you look at it. It's breathtaking. I mean, I remember doing it on the podcast. Somehow I downloaded the game, and, in the Emirates, when they play back the goal on the stadium monitors, on the screens in the stadium, I had no commentary on the footage that I had, and you were watching it, and then you could hear the moment where they replayed the goal in the stadium, and there's just this and people just could not believe what they were seeing. So it's a beautiful goal.
It was impossible to defend against as well. There's nothing that Norwich could have done about that goal. It was just breathtaking is the word you used. I'd definitely echo that.
I think he was an underrated player, Giroud, I'm talking about here, sorry, with regards to those little touches in and around the box as well. I think he did that more often than you think, didn't he, really? He had a very good touch. So, I mean, I can't argue with that. It's a fantastic goal. What about you, Andrew?
I went for one that's not necessarily as aesthetically pleasing, but one which means a lot to me personally, and that's the Alan Sunderland goal in the 1979 FA Cup final against Manchester United, when it looked like Arsenal were cruising to victory. You were 2-0 up with 5 or 6 minutes to go, and Manchester United scored 2 goals. And I was, 8 at the time, and it was the first game I can really remember watching on TV. And back then, the FA Cup final was about the only live football you ever got anyway. But I remember, I think it sort of taught me a lot about football, that game, because this idea that we were going to win the cup was fantastic. And it was easy, and we were 2-0 up, and there was hardly any time left. And then it was, oh, God, it's 2-2. They've somehow scored twice, and you're heartbroken, and you're wondering, what's going to happen here? The momentum surely is with Manchester United. If it goes to extra time, they're going to be buoyed by the 2 goals they scored. And then all of a sudden we score again. And it's sort of this idea, football can take you from here to here and then down and then back again. And, it's a celebration I remember very well. Liam Brady picking up the ball, putting it out to Graham Ricks on the left-hand side. I remember Brady's socks down by his ankles. It was a hot day in May in Wembley, FA Cup final day, and he was knackered. And I don't think if we'd scored then we would have gone on to win the cup. But the Ricks cross came in, Gary Bailey was nowhere, Alan Sunderland was in at the back post, and Arsenal win the FA Cup. So, if I had to not necessarily because it's the best Arsenal goal I've ever seen, but I just think for what it did to me as a kid, as an Arsenal fan, it means a lot. So I could watch that over and over again. A goal I often try to recreate on my own.
I love it.
Quite a challenge.
I was going to say that's not easy.
No. I could have quite easily chosen that one because that's the first game I ever watched. I was 7 years old, and that was the game where I started to be an Arsenal fan.
There you go. Yeah. Formative.
I know, we're I think we're all, a very sort of similar age. I'm sure it was around that sort of time we all maybe sort of started watching football, and that was the actual first game. I wasn't there in person, but it was the first game I actually sat and watched all the way through. Yeah, from start to finish, and I became an Arsenal fan.
Brilliant. Yeah, I was 5, so I can't remember it sadly, but I did buy the video, the VHS of the game. And I watched it as a teenager, and it was pretty inspirational stuff. I mean, what a climax it was! Sure. Definitely one of the great cup finals. Fantastic.
Yeah, I think it was certainly one of the great finales. I'm not sure the game itself was quite that brilliant, but it was just because so much happened in that last 5 minutes. Yeah, tells you a lot about
what they called it the 5-minute final.
5-minute final.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my goal was a David Rocastle goal in the 88-89 season, and it was against Middlesbrough, where he collected the ball. Because I was on the North Bank for the game, and it was a great season, as we all know, ended in a very similar climax to that cup final that we were talking about just then. And he collected the ball on the right wing, and he dribbled. It must have been, I think it's around 5 or 6 players, and stuck it into the top right hand corner, in off the post. And he was always my favourite player. I absolutely loved David Rocastle to bits, and he was our John Barnes, because at the time, I had a massive respect for John Barnes, but I hated him at the same time because he was the most feared player for me. I hated Arsenal coming up against Liverpool because John Barnes was just seemingly impossible to stop at that point. And
we'll always be thankful for him for trying to score and fall alive in '89 when he kept it in the corner.
Definitely, yeah. But that goal was so exhilarating for me. It meant so much to me because it was just some points I could score against all the scummy Liverpool fans in my school, and go in and say, "Oh, did you see that Rocastle goal yesterday?" And it was so special. It just got me out my just exhilaration. It meant so much to me at that particular point. So let's move on to the game. I'll start with you this time, Andrew. And what game you could quite happily watch over and over again and never get bored?
Look, there have been many successes in Arsenal's history, and you could watch a title clinching game, or you could watch a cup final that we won. But I just think for pure entertainment value, and to rewatch the best Arsenal team probably at its absolute peak, even if the game itself doesn't necessarily suggest that, I think the 5-3 against Middlesbrough, when we went 3-1 down and then just came back to win 5-3. I think Bergkamp scored, Reyes scored, Perez, just for pure entertainment value, the football that we played, the character in that side, that even when we were 3-1 down, it wasn't enough to beat us back then because we were just so good, so fluid from an attacking point of view. The talent within the squad, in the team, on the bench was unbelievable. And it's just one of those games where you can't quite believe what you're seeing. So even though I know how it turns out, if you want to just be pure entertainment, I think that's hard to beat.
Yeah, good pick.
Adrian?
Yeah, that was a barnstormer, that's for sure. For me, it would be, if you're looking for almost the perfect performance, it's the cup final win against Chelsea in 2017. I thought it was perfect. It really was, because Chelsea were the champions. They were going for the double. We weren't expected to win. We'd beaten, obviously, City in the semi-final. Mertesacker and Holding were at the back, and And Mertesacker produced the performance of his career, didn't he? It was absolutely
unbelievable,
mesmeric, really, what he produced. But I think the whole team stepped up to the plate, and they did it for the badge. They did it for the manager. And of course, it took us to the record 13th FA Cup win. And I think the winning goal as well, just after Chelsea have sort of sunk our hearts. We've dominated the game. We've bossed it. We deserve to win. Then they score. And you think, oh, here we go again. And we didn't have to suffer for too long. And that wonderful assist from Giroud for Ramsey comes steaming in. I just loved it. It was a perfect winning goal. And for me, one of the greatest performances of the Arsene Wenger era. They weren't the best team, not by any stretch of the imagination. They didn't compare to 98, 02, 04, any of those teams. But they worked as a unit that day, and they outplayed a very, very good Chelsea team. So that's the one for me.
All right.
So unexpected, wasn't it? It's a fantastic result. Absolutely. I'm chuckling to myself because on the initial Mesut Island Disks that I did, I was castigated for mentioning Middlesbrough loads of times because my favourite goal was against Middlesbrough. And the game that I mentioned was against Middlesbrough as well, but not the 5-3, which was an amazing game. My one was a 7-0 performance against Middlesbrough, which I really didn't expect at the particular time, because I think it was Pascal Segan at left back. We had Johan Giroud and Philippe Senderos in the central defence. And at the time, Middlesbrough had a really good team. I think it had, Mendieta and all sorts. We're going into the game absolutely ravaged with injury. And we just, similar way to what you said, Andrew, about the performance, it was just exhilarating from the first moment till the last. And it's back in the day when we could count an opponent's corner against us as a goal-scoring opportunity. Where
those are the days.
They'd whip the ball in, and 7 seconds later, it was in their goal. And it was one of those games. It was just everything clicked, and their performance was just incredible. I think it was Thierry Henry hat-trick at the time. I can't remember the rest of his goal scores. I can just remember being blown away by their performance. And it just made me laugh, because I had two Middlesbrough things, and obviously you chose an Middlesbrough one as well, so I've got a theme
carrying on the tradition here, obviously.
Yeah, well, we had a number of performances against Middlesbrough around those sorts of times. I can remember another, I think it might have been a 7-1 or something at that particular point as well, and I know we gave Everton a few hardings at that point as well, but
wasn't there a 5 or 6-0? Was it against Middlesbrough when Kanu scored that sort of back flick goal, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah,
away from
absolutely.
home, yeah.
That's right, it was, yeah. So we had some good performances against Middlesbrough, but they had a really good team back then, and they spent a lot of money, didn't they? And had some very good players. And what was the name's gone out of my head? The Australian forward, Viduka, yeah. I mean, he was sort of a fat lump, wasn't he? But he was a very, very good player. Another player I did like playing against. He was a really good finisher, wasn't he? He could score some goals.
Yeah, he did. That final game at Highbury, or not the final game at Highbury, but end of the season at Highbury, didn't he score against us for Leeds?
Yes, he did.
Yeah. Let's move on from this. Painful memories now.
Well, we move on from the game that we loved to one game that we could just get rid of as if it didn't happen. We could just have it on a VHS and burn it on the desert islands beach, so we never have to see it ever again. Which one would you go for? I'll go back to you, Andrew, on that one.
The one I went for was the Champions League game against Chelsea in the Invincible season, because even thinking about it now gives me a little bit of heartache. So, I mean, if by burning it, I assume that we advance in the competition.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't get done by that Wayne Bridge goal. So, I did think about the Champions League final in 2006, but I do remember at the end of the game, despite the fact we lost, being, really proud in the stadium with all the Arsenal fans and, standing, singing, just absolutely supporting the players and supporting the club, despite the fact we'd suffered a heartbreaking defeat. There was something to be proud of that night. That's something that really lives. It's a bittersweet memory for me, that one. But that Chelsea game, because that, not winning the Champions League, that team, the quality it had, it really should have, particularly that season when you look at who else was in it. And I do wonder, there's part of me that wonders, if we had, would Mourinho have risen to the kind of prominence that he did? Maybe he'd just be scratching around now at Victoria or something like that in Portugal. He would have saved loads more heartaches. So there's lots of layers to this for me. So that game I'm burning.
Don't put that thought in our mind. That just makes it. I'll change my mind. I'll definitely wipe that game from history there. But it was our year, wasn't it? That year that we were the best team in Europe. Henry was the best player in the world, and that defeat shouldn't have happened. Yeah, it's a great pick. Yeah.
It's the Stadio podcast. I don't know whether either of you listen to the Stadio podcast with Musa Okwonga. They've done a couple of what if podcasts, which are excellent, and basically peeling like the skin off some onions like that, like going down a wormhole about what would have happened. And it's very interesting when you actually just think about if one result could change in what could actually come out of that. And I do believe you're right. I mean, you know what Chelsea's like as a club with sacking managers, even if they've won the league the season before. And if he hadn't won that match, would he have got the sack by Chelsea?
Well, it was at Porto, you see. That's the thing. Porto won the Champions League that season. So that's what that's what thrust him to prominence. It was Claudio Ranieri was manager of Chelsea at the time. So
I got completely wrong, but it's very interesting to see what by changing one result in certain situations, what could have actually happened.
Yeah.
So, what was your game?
Well, on that subject, I mean, first of all, I'd like to wipe that game. I'd like to wipe another Chelsea game, the Europa League final from last year. That was horrendous. With so much at stake, that second half needs to be eradicated from history. But my pick is another Chelsea game, and it's a game that I never actually saw. I don't think at the time. I can't remember watching it anyway. But it was in '91. It was at Stamford Bridge, and Chelsea inflicted a 2-1 defeat on the '91 team at Stamford Bridge. Graham Stewart and Kerry Dixon got the goals, and it was a poor Chelsea team.
Adams was in prison, wasn't he?
Adams was in prison. Baldy had to come off at half time. It was a bit of a patched up side. It's a very average Chelsea team. We weren't at our best, and they snuck a win, and it was the only defeat of that season. And I do think that '91 team, I was lucky enough. That was the year before I joined full time as an apprentice. So I'd have been in my last year of school. So I went to all the home games, got tickets for the games. Fantastic team to watch, just glorious going forward, but so stubborn at the back. I think only 18 goals conceded over a season, which is just ridiculous. Really, they deserve to be invincible, and but for that game, they would have been, and Arsenal would have a 2-0 advantage on the rest of this country when it comes to invincibility. So,
we wouldn't have been that worried about Liverpool this season. Like we got one in the bank.
If we had the two
that year as well, weren't we?
We scored for fun. It was honestly
going forward as well.
That team has been a little bit forgotten. Really, they were stupendous from back to front, and if we had that cushion of two invincibilities in the bag, like you say, we could just chill out if anyone else gets it.
Wow, that's a great shout, actually. Thanks for the terrible memories, but I mean, I can't argue that at all either. That's a really good one. I mean, I didn't go for the Champions League final either because it also gave me one of the best moments of my Arsenal fandom. When we scored and went ahead, I would never want to take that feeling away because it was just brilliant. I mean, it was just a phenomenal night. It's just, I mean, it obviously ended incredibly poorly, but you still, at the end of the game, totally dejected. But after getting over it a little bit, you still were so proud of the team, for the way that they performed. And we were the best team on the night. We should have gone 2-0 up quite easily, shouldn't we? And there was some good points to take out of that game, and I wouldn't want to get rid of it completely. But that's why I didn't choose that one. But I chose the 8-2 against Man United.
It's a good one. That's a good one.
Because I think, and I've heard Tim Stillman give a very, very good account of why he thinks that could have been almost not the beginning of the end of Arsene Wenger, but I don't think he fully recovered from that game. I think it hit him really hard, and I think it was just the beginning of a downfall, really. And it was just such a bad result in so many ways, not just the scoreline, but I think that a lot of the team and the manager sort of wondered really where we were going after that, and it caused a lot of heartache moving forward. So I just would like to eradicate that from
where that rivalry was, where the colossal heavyweights collided. I mean, I still miss those duels. I really do. And it was football. It was Premier League football at its peak, in my opinion. Those United Arsenal duels, and to see the difference at that point was just, it was painful, wasn't it? So
it was the culmination of a terrible summer as well, wasn't it? With everything else that was going on with Cesc and Nasri, and the sort of lack of transfer action, and not dealing with those situations maybe as well as we could have. And look, to be fair, it was a real low point, and we brought in Mikel Arteta, and maybe without that 8-2, we don't have the manager we have now. Maybe he wouldn't have come in. Genuinely, and him and Mertesacker in particular were very important in stabilizing the team, and if not getting it back to where it was, just sort of steadying the ship and just sort of changing the trajectory. And those two guys, when you look at it now,
well, they run the club.
Yeah, well, exactly. Arteta's the manager, and Mertesacker is the head of the youth academy, and maybe without that 8-2, we don't have that. So
yeah, shit happens, eh? Shit happens. In fact, I mean, just a quick diversion. In hindsight, wouldn't it have been lovely though if before we had appointed the man who won't be named with a White Witch as a partner? Wouldn't it be nice in hindsight if we'd actually did appoint Mikel Arteta at that time, but maybe kept on Arsene Wenger for one more season, just to guide him and sort of have him to train him as his successor, rather than appointing Unai Emery in the first place? I
don't know.
Everyone could see how good Mikel Arteta was, and we all know that he was so close to getting the job in the first place.
But he might have needed that extra 18 months or whatever it was to learn under Guardiola. It might have been too soon for him then. It may well have been. I don't know. I felt like that it had gone so far that Arsene had to depart really, and I couldn't see him. I couldn't really see him tutoring someone because he'd owned it, hadn't he? He'd owned the job, and he was very hands on. And I just don't think, as much as we all love Arsene Wenger, and what he did, I don't think he was brilliant at being inclusive. And I don't think he would have had him side by side, or anyone really for that matter.
Yeah,
that's true. And he didn't went through a stage of not liking having sort of old club players and legends and in the club, did he? I mean, he had Martin Keown for a little while and just got rid of him, and so it was odd. Anyway, it was just one of those where we was just discussing sort of the sliding doors moments, whether that could have been a missed opportunity at that point, and it would have sort of got rid of the Unai Emery era, which would have been great. Anyway, let's move on from that anyway, and move on to the music side of things. And I'll go to you first, Adrian, on this one. One song for you to summarise like the Wenger era. When you
Well, I've picked this song because of the words in the title, not because of the song. I don't really know the lyrics of the song, but it's Young Hearts Run Free, Candy Staton. I've chosen it because those 4 words, I think, are really words that I would associate with Arsene Wenger. Young, of course, great faith in young players right from the word go. He entrusted trust in young players. So, and that's something that had been a tradition as well previously under George Graham and Rioch, and he continued it, which was brilliant. So yeah, young for Wenger. Hearts. When I think of the great Arsene Wenger teams, they had heart, and we think back and think about the pretty football and how glorious it was. But in those big games, they had big, massive hearts, and you don't become as successful as they were if you don't have that. I've just done a classic breakdown that will be coming out, I think, on Friday to coincide with the anniversary of Arsenal winning at Manchester United in 2002 to win the double. Wow. And I'm going to be recording it later tonight, actually. Right. And the players just showed incredible heart that night, and that wasn't unusual. So that's that part. Run, because running and power and pace was always synonymous with Arsene Wenger, particularly at the start in the late 90s. And then free, because he allowed the players to express themselves and to run free and to be not hindered by the pressure of what was going on them. So yeah, Young Hearts Run. That title symbolised Arsene Wenger for me.
Yeah,
good on.
That's fantastic. Great answer. And we didn't worry about the opposition, did we? We just know that we could go out and express ourselves and beat them, whoever it was.
You say, yeah, that is true, but in the same breath, there were tactics and there were game plans. This particular game, he trusted his players to play their game, but this particular game that I've just analysed, we did change, actually. We didn't go there and play cavalier football. We went there, we needed a point, went over game plan, played a really narrow midfield, and it completely flummoxed Manchester United. There was no way through. And the hold-up of the split strikers, Wiltord and Kanu that night was outstanding. And it was a different type of Arsenal. So I think that he was a tactician, but it was the way that he allowed the players to express themselves and to be free that is the way that we'll probably remember him.
Yeah. Well, I my memory from that game, and I might be but I seem to remember, especially the first half, maybe even the first 20 or 30 minutes, I think Man United should have had 2 or 3 players sent off. Oh, yeah. That'd be interesting to see that again.
Yeah, you got a good memory, Andrew.
The tackles were incredible.
Well, if it makes it through the edit, makes it through the edit, then there will be some of these fouls will be highlighted. So you've got those to look forward to in the piece.
Good. They certainly were on the night, and I remember at half time the pundits in the studio didn't even mention any of those tackles.
Well, and that's what I'm talking about, heart, because the players that night, they took it on the chin. They didn't let it wind them up. They didn't let it distract from the game plan, and they just sort of summoned it up from there to prove their worth with the ball and with their superiority, and they were superior. So yeah, it was you got a good memory picking out those fouls. There were four. There were 4 fouls in that game that would have been red cards today for sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
We had a lot of players out that match as well. We had a lot of injuries, and players like Sylvain Wiltord and who were fringe players, and Kanu, one of my favourite players of all time. That I just joy to watch Kanu. But he was a sub, really, wasn't he? He wasn't a starter all the time at all. In our first 11, and to have him and Wiltord, who was the same. Just come in and play like that, and play, like you say, with that heart and desire and the absolute will to win was incredible. And I wasn't suggesting before that Wenger didn't go out with any kind of tactics at all or anything like that. But
no.
We didn't worry too much about, I'm not keep going back to him, but we've got to soon on the next question. But the Unai Emery period, we put all our emphasis on what the opposition were going to do, and none of what we could do to them. It was the opposite really with Wenger, wasn't it?
Yeah, it
but
was.
Anyway, Andrew, what about yourself? What song would you choose to summarise the Wenger era?
This is very simple. There's a song by David Bowie on an album called Hours, and the title of the song is Brilliant Adventure. And to me, that just sums up everything about the Wenger era. Like, it was amazing and the best football I think I've seen Arsenal play. And look, it had its ups and downs, and some of the downs were quite downy. But then, even within that, we had amazing days like the cup final in 2014, 2015, 2017, as Adrian said. So, even when things were at their most contentious, there were things to enjoy. And I know maybe for some people the FA Cup is not enough, and I get that. You want to set your sights as high as possible, but I loved those days. I loved winning the FA Cup. So, just overall, a brilliant adventure for 22 years.
Yeah.
Here.
Fantastic. Well, the choice I had previously was the Divinals, I Touch Myself. And I'll leave it there.
Yeah.
I won't go into that too much.
No need.
So we move on from there to the Unai Emery era, and I'll go to you, Andrew, first on this one. I'll give you my one.
Go on, go on.
My song for this one was Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now by the Smiths.
Right, okay. I'm getting the sense from this that you didn't particularly enjoy the Unai Emery era.
None.
Right?
It was the odd game, but it was nothing to do with Unai Emery, I think. And on a lot of those occasions, I think we won despite him rather than the fact that it was down to him. Anyway, that's just me. But no, I was not. I've as I said earlier in the show, I've been an Arsenal fan since 1979, and I think the last few games of last season and a few games of the first part of this season, I've been the lowest I've felt as an Arsenal fan, and that's genuine. And we've been through some lows. Let's face it. We've discussed a few tonight, and there were some terrible capitulations under Arsene Wenger at the end of the season, where we were in excellent positions with 10 games to go, and due to one thing or another, we just fell away, and we lost a few leagues that we should have won. But I've never felt as depressed as I did at the end of last season when we had it in our hands to finish third with just a couple of points that we needed, and the capitulation in the league, and then topped off with what we saw in the second half in Baku. I don't think I could ever feel that low as an Arsenal fan, but I did. And,
well, my song choices are not going to cheer you up. If I had to go, I was thinking about a few, so I thought about SOS by ABBA. This is not a love song by Public Image Limited. This Corrosion by Sisters of Mercy. But I went with Tainted Love by Soft Cell.
Great choice.
Because, like you, I felt a little bit at the end of my tether with what happened, and I'm feeling happier now. So I'm choosing to focus on that, but I can't pretend that it didn't damage my. Not damage is not wrong, but I found it hard to enjoy what was going on.
I couldn't. I just, for the first time, I just wasn't enjoying watching Arsenal play at all. I wasn't looking forward to the matches coming up, and I've never felt like that before, ever.
No. Look at the body language of the players. I don't think they were enjoying it as well, and that ultimately is why it had to end. So,
yeah. What's your choice, Adrian?
It's Complicated by Avril Lavigne because
that's a good one, yeah.
Because he just got himself into such a pickle. I think clearly in his own language, in his own native country, he's a smart cookie. You don't become as successful as Unai Emery has been without knowing your football and knowing how to use your tactical brain. But here, with the communication issues, with the new league, with players that needed a bit of convincing, I think, to get on board with his philosophy. everything became too complicated. And I think his messages in press conferences were muddled as well, weren't they? And yeah, I couldn't really think of a better word to sum up what happened, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And by the end, look, I was in the room, the press conference at Emirates on the final press conference that he did this season, and you knew there and then that he was broken. Yeah, he was a broken coach at that point, and the change had to be made. But yes, so complicated, just purely because I think that the players, they didn't understand what the message was, not just that game, but in the previous few months, it had just got worse and worse.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to just quickly mention a few people that are watching, putting comments on Mr. Arsenal podcast. Ryan, thank you for watching. Ryan from the Arse Brothers podcast as well. Stan the Man, he said his song for the Emery era would have been Stand and Deliver by Adam and the Ants. And Melvin Marks put a comment on, thank you for watching, Melvin, saying that he was at that game, the Chelsea game that you mentioned, Adrian, as well.
Right. Yeah.
91. So
yeah,
sorry about that, Melvin. And,
too soon to talk about it.
91, absolutely. So yeah, I say it could have been a number of songs from the Smiths, really. They all want to make you slit your wrist, don't they? But yeah, heaven knows how miserable now.
Yeah, that's a good choice. It was decent.
So let's move on to how you're feeling now. And I know we've got to do a bit of projection with this one, but the Emery era's gone. We've got the Arteta era, and let's have a song for what you're feeling about that and what it could potentially bring. Andrew, I'll go to you first.
I chose George Michael, Faith, because I just see, I'm sort of rejuvenated a little bit. I feel like the hangover's gone, and I have a lot of faith in Mikel Arteta. Every time I hear him speak, I'm impressed by what he says and how he says it. His messaging seems to be clear and direct, and he instills, I think, faith in the fans, and also it looks like he's got faith in the players, and vice versa. So it's early days, but so far so good. So I'll go with that one.
Yeah.
That's a great choice. Yeah.
I thought about that one, Andrew. So yeah, good.
I
I like
What's
it.
yours, Adrian?
Well, I went with. I used to love Oasis, so I'm going with Roll With It, because I think we have to roll with it because it's going to be a bumpy ride along the way. We're going to have highs, we're going to have lows. We've got to have faith, as George Michael once said. And the song as well is kind of about not letting anybody get in your way. Don't let anybody get in your way. Don't ever stand aside. Don't ever be denied. Be who you want to be if you're coming with me. And that's what I feel with Arteta. I feel there's a real steely eye about him. And he knows where he wants to go to. And he's laying down the challenge to the players. Are you coming with me? Because I know where we're heading. I believe that I have what it takes to take us to the very top again. Are you going to be distracted, or are you going to come with me and not let anything get in the way? And that effectively is what that song's all about. And as fans, I think we all just have to roll with it and take one or two blows on the chin. But ultimately, I think we are heading in the right direction. I think finances are going to be an issue in the short term, and who we can get in, and that's the one challenge, and the one thing we don't know about Arteta yet. How good's his eye? How what will be his picks in the transfer market? If he gets those right, I think his coaching ability and general winner's mindset will take us where we want to be.
Mm.
Very true. Very true. And I did you see the phone call that Ian Wright had with him a day or two ago, which was up on YouTube? He had with Arteta.
No, I haven't seen it yet. I gotta look it up. I saw a little clip of it today, but I haven't seen the whole thing yet.
Oh, it's excellent. And every time he's infectious, the guy Arteta. I can't help being very enthusiastic about him. And he said that, you know, things like you should never have to talk players into staying at Arsenal or joining Arsenal. And the way he talks about Arsenal just makes you so proud. You know, he's so proud about being the manager, and it just comes out of him. His aura. It's just you can just tell that he's telling the truth. You know, and the way he was discussing Arsenal with Ian Wright was just fantastic.
Yeah, he's a great communicator. Great communicator,
He is,
and I think that's such an important ingredient for a football manager, where you have to deal with different characters and also, you know, people from different countries as well. So yeah, I think his messages are super clear, aren't they? And yeah, look, he's not perfect. He's learning, isn't he? He's developing.
Absolutely, yeah.
But
it's just
exciting.
You know,
it's
just to go
potential.
on a journey with him.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
my song was "What a Wonderful World" by Jerry Ramone. And I mean, I like the original. I love the original as well, but I love Jerry Ramone's version. It's fantastic, and my favourite tune. But I see trees of green, red roses too. I can just start seeing nice things again. You know, the world feels wonderful again after going through.
There you go. Keep focusing on Arteta. Stop thinking about Unai Emery.
I have
Focusing on Mikel Arteta. Every time you think something bad about Emery, just take out a picture of Mikel Arteta and look at it for 5 minutes. You'll feel better.
I saw this thing on Twitter today. If you bear with me 1 second, it was where was it? It just summed everything up perfectly. It said it was actually a photo of a black sort of chalkboard outside a cafe, and it said, "Here we are. Fold your worries into paper planes and turn them into flying fucks." And I think that's what that's what I've done with regards to the Unai Emery period. It's just gone, and
Good.
I don't give a flying fuck anymore. Anyway, so yeah, it's. I think that summed it up perfectly for me. And the last thing to discuss, as I know we're coming up to sort of a time where I'm sure you guys need to. So yeah, I've taken up a lot of your time already, but the film I chose was Never Ending Story for my thoughts and how Arsenal are in my world, because I think it's self-explanatory, really. I think it would always be with me until my dying day. There's part of my life, Arsenal, and they always will be. So Never Ending Story was an obvious choice for me, really. Adrian, did you come up with a?
Well, I struggled. I got to be honest. I struggled. Look, Arsenal been part of my life since I was 10. So Steve Rowley spotted me at a five-a-side tournament in Colchester, coming up towards my 11th birthday, and yeah, it sort of.
Were you an Arsenal fan originally?
I was brought up in Suffolk. My dad is a Spurs fan, believe it or not, and I was never drawn that way, thankfully. But I was a junior blue at Ipswich. Sort of followed them, but then as soon as I went to my first Arsenal game, and I remember it was Arsenal Man United '86. And early George Graham, as I say, and I stood just to the right of the paddock where the dugouts were. It was a terrace back then. Stood there with my dad, and I was just hooked on Arsenal from that moment onwards. Didn't want to play for anybody else, and I had opportunities to go to other teams along the way. Particularly at one point, where there was some sort of lucrative or tempting contracts on offer from other teams who were guaranteeing me basically long-term deals. But no, it wasn't for me, and I wanted to take my chances on Arsenal. But yeah, film-wise, I struggled. The one that springs to mind for me personally, and it's not to do with how I feel, what it means to me. It's what's happened to me, and that it's Back to the Future, because I started off as a player. I started off as a player, and then I left Arsenal. It was heartbreaking. I was gutted. It was the right thing. I wasn't quite good enough ultimately to play for Wenger's team. They'd kicked on, and they signed Overmars in my place. Absolutely no complaints about that decision. So that was that. but it was, it was upsetting and maybe something I struggled to get over because I did have regrets. I did have regrets, and because I felt like I was a good pro and I lived life properly, but I didn't necessarily go the extra mile. I didn't do the extra training that you hear about Beckham and the guys at Manchester United were doing at the time. So there were things, could I have done more? And I thought that was it. But then, I became a journalist, and then the club reached out. They'd heard what I was doing and reached out to me and said, "Look, do you want to get back involved and do some co-commentating at first?" And the journey over the last, it's probably, I'd say it's 9 years since I started doing co-commentaries. No, actually, longer than that. It's been 10 or 12 years actually since I started doing commentaries. And it grew, and then I've been presenting. I do the analysis and whatnot, and I just love being part of the club again and walking through the doors.
Really, aren't you? You've been working with Arsenal and doing what you're doing.
It's different because I don't really have anything to do with the players or the staff. I don't go to the training ground. I sort of work alone, but my work gets put out there for you guys, for the supporters, and I just take so much pleasure from it. I have to say, I enjoy this as much as I did playing, in a way. I really do. Yeah. I really do, because it's something that I'm passionate about, and it's going okay. And I think as a player, I was always not nervous because I was quite relaxed, but I was always on edge because you knew that you were always on trial. It's a high pressure environment, and I don't know how much I let myself enjoy it at the time, but now, watching football, talking about football, analysing football, I just enjoy it.
You're not having to prove yourself week in, week out, because you know what you're doing every week is good stuff and people enjoy it. So
you're only as good as your last breakdown, Andrew. You know what I mean?
Well, listen, I know. People will be quick to let you know if you make a mess of one. Don't worry. But I'm just trying to say I think they're good. So
thanks, mate.
Quick question. I mean, if your career was to end right now, and you had to sort of, the first sort of few real highlights that would sort of immediately spring to mind as the real great highlights of what you've done, so whether it was during play or afterwards, I mean, what would really spring to mind?
I don't know. I think just making it, mate. Well, I think making it into the first team is such a long journey, and you have to see off so many great players, so many talented players. You have to fight and scrap, and there is blood, sweat, and tears to get to that point. And I was 20, I think, when I made my debut, but I came on for Alan Smith. It wasn't great because we lost the game against QPR.
Can I stop you just 1 second? I'm just going to quickly ask Andrew. We'll go. Andrew, do you know the significance, and I hope this is true, I really do. Do you know the significance of Adrian's debut for Arsenal?
No.
Because I didn't until recently.
Okay.
It's a mad one.
Well, it's a John Jensen game, wasn't it? It was the game.
It was John Jensen's goal.
Yeah,
okay.
John Jensen's long-awaited goal, and that was Adrian's debut.
Yeah, it was my debut. I came off the bench, and to be honest, I think QPR scored when I came on, and so it wasn't great. Like, I played all right, it was fine, but we lost the game. But yeah, it was remembered for that. And afterwards, I bought the T-shirt. Yeah, I bought the market stores around Highbury were selling I was there when Jensen scored T-shirt
for weeks.
Yeah, and I bought one and got him to sign it. I got it somewhere. So I should probably stick that on eBay at some point. But but my full debut, and the one I choose to remember personally, was actually just shy of a year later, Boxing Day against QPR, 12 noon kickoff. We beat QPR 3-0, and it was a dream debut. It was like we won the game, but I had a good match, and afterwards, it was I was one of the men of the match. I don't know if I was man of the match, but yeah, I had a good game, and it just felt so exciting. So yeah, no, I suppose that, I mean, it's hard to really top that. I mean, in terms of what I do now, that I think the breakdown is the thing that that I'm most proud of, because it's hard work. Putting it together isn't quick or easy, but I take pride in making it the best it can be. So, and what the reason I love it and the reason I feel proud is that the feedback I get, and you know what social media is like, it can be brutal, can't it? And you can get some really horrible people and messages. But I've had so many amazing messages, positive messages from fans, win, lose or draw, people telling me that they've enjoyed it and learned stuff and they appreciate it. So yeah, doing the breakdown is a joy for me, and that's a highlight.
Well, I'd love to get the opportunity to get you back on one day and just sort of go really sort of a bit more into that. That'd be really fascinating. I'd be really interested in doing that.
No problem.
If you consider it. Andrew,
Yeah,
I know you've got to go in a second. So what did you come up with the film before?
Yeah, I went for Rocky. Kind of the underdog who doesn't quite make it, then makes it, then it doesn't quite happen for him, and then I think it kind of symbolizes, and even the title, it can be great, but it can also be a bit rocky. So I did, like Adrian, I struggled to think of one, but I reckon that would be it. I was trying to figure out how I could make Hot Shots Part 2 fit to Arsenal.
I love that film. Hot Shots.
So do I.
It's brilliant. Oh, fantastic! I love that, and Airplane, and
all those.
Top Secret as well. Have you seen Top Secret?
Love those.
He goes, hey, you dropped your fake dog turd. He goes, I don't sell fake dog turd. Anyway, if you've got time, quickly, Andrew, I'd like to ask you a very similar question. Doing the Arseblog as you've done for so many years now, and it's been absolutely fantastic. And I mean, I love what you do. And what would you say are sort of great big moments that doing the Arseblog has brought you in your life? What would you put as your highlights?
I think the fact that connecting with Arsenal fans around the world, and also sort of creating a community where people know each other online, they know each other offline, they come together to watch games. And over the years we've had births and marriages, and unfortunately a few people have gone before their time as well, but that's I think what happens when you do something for as long as I've done it. But I just think making the connection with Arsenal fans wherever they are in the world, I think we've got an amazing fan base everywhere, and the game has gone global, and to be able to give people stuff that they want to read and want to listen to and everything else, to me is fantastic. Like if you told me 20 years ago that my job would be writing and talking about Arsenal, I would have said you were crazy. How could that possibly be the case? But it is, and that in itself is the highlight for me, I think.
Well, yeah, you're living
and meeting you two guys, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely, and I'm certainly not blowing smoke up your arsecast, but what you've been doing is fantastic, Andrew. I really enjoy it. Especially during this period, you've been doing an incredible job. Putting together the blog and every day, and the arsecast, and coming up with things without football. And I think you've just been doing a genius job. So
well done, Andrew. I'll let you into a little secret as well. I don't often sort of look at player ratings and things like that, but sometimes I won't have been able to see the match at the time if I'm not working or working on a different game and whatnot. And if I'm looking for player ratings, I'll come to you, Andrew. I'll go to Arseblog. So there you go. If I want to know what happened, how people
great secrets there.
Well, as I said, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. It's been a real pleasure. It's been an absolute highlight for me, and thank you ever so much. I know that you've got to go, but
you're welcome.
All the very best to you, and keep up the good work, Andrew.
Thanks a million.
Yeah, thanks.
Take care.
Thanks a lot, guys. Nice one.
Thank you. And Adrian, if you do get the chance to come back on again soon, I would love to sort of go a bit more into detail about how you actually come up with these breakdowns. I'll find it fascinating.
Well, when we're allowed to, seeing as we live about a mile apart, I'll have to come over. We're going to have it over a beer, can't we?
Maybe we do it. Yeah, exactly.
If we're ever allowed to do that.
And have a pint. That'd be fantastic.
All right.
Take care, you guys, and thanks ever so much again.
Cheers.
Bye.